Yesterday, I think, yes, it was. There was a suggestion that was it yesterday or Monday uh, that the police, who had decided that they were going to allow free speech in this country and it wasn't a criminal event, were seeking to, well, if not recriminalise it, then certainly make it a reportable offence if you said anything that they found offensive. And there has been what you could only describe as ongoing skirmishes between the Free Speech Union and between the police over training material provided to police personnel as to what constitutes hate speech or is a reportable but not criminal event. Yesterday, as I understand, there was a meeting between the Free Speech Union and the Assistant Police Commissioner, Jill Rogers, who is responsible for police training. And the Free Speech Union took their concerns that despite being told after the election that they would review this with the idea of taking it down, that they continued to teach aspirant police personnel that if you say something like free speech or the treaty is a fraud or ban the treaty or anything, you might be in actual fact having a reportable offence put against your name and the police visiting you, which seems extraordinary, but there you go. The Police Minister, Mark Mitchell, when queried on this issue, I think last week or earlier this week, suggested that it was a police operational matter and he wasn't going to get involved, which wasn't exactly the phrase that I wanted to hear, nor a number of other people who would have supported free speech. So the Free Speech Union went to the beast itself, police headquarters, as I understand it, yesterday afternoon, met the Assistant Police Commissioner. What happened? Well, we've got Jonathan Ayling to tell us about that right now, and he joins us this afternoon. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Michael.
I think I've summarised what the problem was. How long, just before we get into what happened and all that sort of stuff, how long have the police been using training material that would seem to suggest that freedom of speech is under threat from that quarter? How long have they been doing this?
This training first emerged in 2022 at a cost of $10 million. And then when you review
What?
the training, it's an incredible sum. As our senior legal counsel described it, it's shit, so why did you pay so much? But all this really came out of the Royal Commission of Inquiry. And Michael, you'll know, and your listeners will be aware as well, that across many agencies and governments, the events of March 15th, 2019 caused such understandable angst that we have been looking to react to it and put in place prevention so that that couldn't happen again. Unfortunately, that may mean overreach or a misappropriation of interest in some areas, and I think that's what's happening here. Your question is, when did this training start? 2022, and we were brought. It was brought to our attention. We've been working with police, and off the back of a meeting we had with the police commissioner in August last year, and now more recently with the assistant police commissioner who's responsible for training, we are seeing some progress. You never get everything that you want on these things, but the removal of what are called NCHIs, non-criminal hate incidences, this is a term that comes out of Britain. The fact that New Zealand will no longer be using those, that there is an objective standard that must be flagged. It relates to physical harm. It is not simply a perception-based threshold. This is a major win, and it puts us on a very different setting than what is currently happening in the UK or other countries like Australia and Canada that we often compare ourselves to.
Yeah, you're suggesting that like many woke sort of initiatives, they seem to emanate from the UK. Before we come to your discussion yesterday, why do you think that there is this cultural origin in the UK in particular for what you could consider as the inhibition of free speech? Because it's not simply along with the police and so-called hate incidents, but in some of the most august universities and institutions of the United Kingdom as well, which we tend to ape and follow. Why there?
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. I'm not sure the observation is correct. It could be. I get a sense that it's not necessarily coming out of the UK more so than anywhere else, but across the West at the moment, and particularly the Anglophonic Western countries, English-speaking Western countries, this is very much the case. If you look at Canada as well, I would say things are
Oh, yeah,
just as
yeah.
bad, if not worse, there. A number of recent laws that have been passed in Australia probably means they're not quite as bad, but aren't far behind. And so I would say really across the Anglosphere, this is an identity crisis that is almost an existential crisis in a way for the cultural values that have given us the liberal democracies that we are. The English speaking Western countries of the world have pursued greater lengths of prosperity and stability and peace through liberal democracy than any other countries really in the world have. And this is very much related to our deference to civil liberties, and those are founded on free speech. A lot of this emerges intellectually and philosophically from the United States and the critical theories that emerged from the legal discipline there in the 70s. You take that back a step further, and I'm sure your listeners will be pleased to know, Michael, we can probably blame the French. You look at Michel Foucault, you look at Jean-Jacques Derrida and others like that. And prior to that, of course, the Frankfurt School in the 1920s is really where neo-Marxism first emerges. So there's kind of an intellectual genealogy there that now is coming to the fore in popular culture that has been bubbling away for quite some time. And that's why whenever I speak with our people, whenever I speak with our donors, we have to be upfront with the fact that this is not a fight that is going to be won with one or two court victories or one and two new pieces of legislation. Those are important, but it's taken us decades to get to this point, and the institutional capture that has occurred, the long march through the institution, our only choice is to turn around and march back through it. And that's why meeting with police, ensuring their training is correct, we're going to have a stronger threshold that officers are operating to. There's a compounding impact there, and over time, I'm confident we can regain this ground.
Okay, so in your meeting yesterday with the Assistant Police Commissioner, I'm sure you put all those particular arguments and a few more in front of her. What was her response to your concerns?
I almost had to pick my jaw up off the floor, to be honest, Michael. We were really surprised. Within 5 or 10 minutes into the meeting, the police said that they were disestablishing NCHIs, which was our primary concern, non-criminal hate incidences that were slanted as a perception threshold. What the training literally says is that if an officer or a victim or a witness or a third party thinks that at any point an action or a comment, whether criminal or not, was motivated by hate, then police, if they are attending to that, need to note that as hate. This is a remarkably low threshold. That literally means any comment or any action could be argued to be hateful, and if police are, for whatever reason, in that vicinity, they would have to note it down as a non-criminal hate incident. What this meant was I asked not the assistant commissioner, but one of her staffers who we were also talking with. We admittedly put the screws into him. There was an intense line of questioning that he had to answer to, and it's difficult to answer for some of this logically. It's not logical, but what he told us is that there was a precipitous drop, he said, in the number of incidences that were being flagged as hateful when they shifted from the perception-based threshold to an objective threshold. And I said, okay, but what does precipitous mean? How many were happening then? How many happening now? And he said, 100 flags were being applied a month across New Zealand of individuals who hadn't committed a crime, but someone somewhere nearby thought something they had said or done was hateful, and now that's on their file. And I said, okay, since the threshold has changed, how many flags now are crossing that objective threshold? And he said 1 or 2 a month, sometimes some months none at all. So this really shows,
Wow.
Michael, when you have a perception-based
Yeah.
threshold,
Yeah.
anyone can claim anything, and it doesn't mean anything. Whereas once you have an objective threshold saying if you are, you're not breaking the law, but you're operating in a way that makes people legitimately feel for their physical safety or something like that, I think that's a legitimate place for the police to take interests. At that point, 1 or 2 incidences are happening that could be deemed as hateful a month. This means this isn't the issue that we're being told it is. And this is exactly what I told the Assistant Commissioner yesterday. I said, because the hate-motivated criminal activity is still there. This is where someone has committed a crime, but because someone alleges it was off the back of hate, they may face an increased sentence as a result. And this is simply being used on a perception basis now as well. There's no objective threshold for whether the crime was committed out of hate. And I said what this will inevitably mean is that the number of hate sentences that have been passed out in our courts will increase. And some journalist is going to pick up on this, and they say that hate-motivated crime has increased 50% in 2 years since the government was established, or something like that. In reality, it has nothing to do with an objective or demonstrable increase in hate. I don't accept this narrative that our society is just falling into an abyss of hate. I think there is an agenda afoot. There is an ideology that describes those who disagree with me or those who don't hold my same perspectives as being hateful. And therefore, there's a narrative afoot to try and characterize that as hate. I'm not sure it's quite that simple.
Okay. So after all that, you're suggesting that the Sentencing Act, which still allows hate to be applied in the courtroom, that will remain. But in terms of the police being able to train their staff to say, list that as a particular incident that is obviously going to go away. Where do you think the initiative came from for the police to back down on this particular issue?